It's Tuesday, April 22. Welcome to another exciting edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm yours truly, Adrian Atkinson. Today marks Global Earth Day 2025, a time to reflect on how our actions impact the planet. This year's theme, Our Power, Our Planet, calls on us to unite behind renewable energy and protect the planet with a focus on tripling clean electricity generation. That's something that you should ponder. Stick and stay with us. There's much more to see on the other side of this very quick break we're about to take.
Keep your heart beating strong. Your health is your wealth. Practice healthy habits. 30 minutes a day keeps heart disease away. Choose life.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry, and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, April 22, 2025. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says the 0% inflation rate for March this year is a clear sign that the country's economy is holding firm and that efforts to manage the cost of living are delivering results for the people. The data was released by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin in its Consumer Price Index CPI report last week. It shows that CPI remained unchanged for March 2025, registering the same index as February at 141.8. According to Statin, this was primarily due to movements in the index of divisions such as housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels at upwards of 2.4%, food and non-alcoholic beverages down 1%, and transport down by 0.2%. Dr. Holness says the outcome is not by accident, but a result of responsible governance, sound economic policy, and a firm commitment to protect purchasing power. Meanwhile, point-to-point inflation from March 2024 to March 2025 was 5%. This was influenced mainly by upward movement of 7.4% for food and non-alcoholic beverages, 5% for housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, and 6.2% for restaurants and accommodation services. More than 7,000 jobs could potentially be created from the development of the Raintree Commercial Complex, located just outside Kingston at Caymanas Estate in Ferry Pen, St. Catherine. Of that, 2,000 jobs will be created during the construction phase of the project, while over the long term, the complex has the potential to accommodate more than 5,000 permanent jobs. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness gave the figures during the groundbreaking and contract signing for Phase 1 of the project last week.
Many of which will be in high-growth sectors, such as business process outsourcing, logistics, manufacturing, warehousing, and other commercial activities. As such, this project represents real opportunities for people. Yes, I can see the welders, the technicians, the engineers, the administrative staff, the ICT professionals, and small entrepreneurs. This is how we translate our economic gains into better lives for the people.
Dr. Holness says the development marks the materialization of a long-held vision of transforming underutilized land into a center of economic activity, employment, innovation, and inclusive growth.
We are laying the foundation for a future of economic expansion, job creation, and spatial transformation that will serve generations to come.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister assures that environmental consideration has been taken in the development of the Raintree Commercial Complex. The master plan calls for over 50% of the area to be preserved in green spaces.
Extensive environmental assessments, including flora and fauna studies and large tree surveys, yes, large tree surveys, were conducted to mitigate any negative impacts. These measures have not only satisfied regulatory requirements, they reflect our national commitment to responsible and sustainable development.
The greater improvement consists of approximately 3,400 hectares of land, which will include commercial, industrial, residential, and mixed-use eco-friendly development. Dr. Holness affirms that infrastructure works permitted by the Natural Resources Conservation Authority are comprehensive and forward-looking.
The internal road network will adhere to both local and international standards. The drainage system has been designed to maintain the natural hydrology of the area, with careful attention to water quality and habitat preservation. A modern sewage system will connect to the Soapberry water treatment plant, which will be expanded.
The Minister of Tourism, Edmund Bartlett, is reporting that Carnival in Jamaica generated approximately $95.4 billion in 2024 and supported an estimated 115,247 jobs across multiple sectors. The event also brought in 5,400 visitors to the island, with 7,400 locals showing up for the annual affair. Minister Bartlett presented the findings of Carnival in Jamaica Economic Impact Assessment last Tuesday. The report documented the period 2018 to 2024.
Carnival is not just an event. There's a whole process that leads up to the finale. And that process involves myriad activities provided by scores and scores of people. And the analysis is showing and the study is indicating. The remarkable return on investment here underscores what we've always known, that investment in our cultural industries yield dividends that far exceed their initial cost.
Carnival in Jamaica celebration was first launched by the government in 2017. And finally, individuals and businesses operating in the coconut, cocoa, coffee, and force-spice industries are being urged to obtain the required licenses. The call was made by the Jamaica Agricultural Commodities Regulatory Authority, JACRA, at a JIS think tank. Legal counsel at the agency, Cherie Miller, emphasizes that licensing promotes legitimacy, ensures accountability, and safeguards the market from unfair competition and counterfeit products.
Licensing also ensures food safety because, of course, licensing has standards, requires all licensees to meet those standards, and it prevents substandard products from entering the market, protecting our consumers' health and also our reputation internationally.
Ms. Miller stresses that there is a growing demand from international trading partners for strict adherence to traceability and compliance regulations.
If it is that you manufacture, distribute, or process a regulated agricultural commodity, if you export or import, if you operate works related to it, if you establish or operate a nursery for any of those, or if you operate as a dealer or special dealer for any of our regulated agricultural commodities or their substitutes, then you are engaged in regulated activities and you must be licensed by JACRA.
The statutory body is responsible for overseeing 7 industries, according to the Jamaica Agricultural Commodities Regulatory Authority Act 2017. Under the Act, anyone engaged in activities such as manufacturing, distributing, processing, exporting, and importing, or dealing in these regulated commodities must be licensed by JACRA. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
Women are diagnosed with cervical cancer each year. The risk of developing these abnormal changes is associated with the infection of HPV. Not only that, early sexual contact, multiple sexual partners, and taking oral contraceptives increases your risk of developing cervical cancer. Ladies, protect yourself. Get tested. It is better to be aware than to be living in absolute fear.
Thanks for staying with us on Jamaica Magazine. The heart is the lifebeat of our very existence, so no effort is too much to keep it in prime condition. Up next, you'll meet Rosie and learn about her inspiring story of coming back from a heart attack and now moving forward with a different perspective on life.
When I swallowed the cheesecake, I felt a burning on my chest. And I said, what was that? I said, I wonder if it's what I had for lunch today.
That was the first sign that something was wrong for theatre and media practitioner Rosemary Morris-Tinglin, who had a heart attack in 2017. Little did she know that while she was hanging out at a friend's home and enjoying some delicious food, that disaster would strike. And nothing could have prepared her for what came next.
I started to feel a burning in my back, like in my rib cage, around the back in between the two shoulder blades. So I told him to loosen my bra, and was one big joke about how the llama burned me till it all reached around my back. Then I felt an urgent need to go to the bathroom. When I went to the bathroom, the burning got worse. I realized that my hand was numb. So I was holding up my right hand in the air, and I realized I couldn't do anything. The burning was bad. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So I said, you know what, let me try and reach them. So I pulled up halfway and kind of dragged myself along the corridor to the doorway where my friends were at, and I said, hospital. Cut the long story short is that I had a major heart attack, and they sent my blood samples down to check what they call the troponin levels, which is what tells you what is happening with your heart. And they said it was high, so I had to go up to the university hospital. Luckily, my brother was there at the time. He works in the MRI unit, or worked in the MRI unit, and facilitated them to give me some fast attention.
Health experts say family history is one of the key factors in heart disease. Consultant cardiologist Dr. Lisa Hurler-Clark explains more about this connection.
90% of patients with hypertension are what we call primary hypertension, meaning that there's no real reason for it. It's most likely family history. And maybe 10% are what we call secondary hypertension, meaning that we have a cause, for example, kidney problems or a blood vessel problem that caused the blood pressure to be elevated. So that 10% is a small number of the patients with hypertension. So the majority of patients with hypertension in Jamaica, it will be because of genetics, family history.
I knew my mother had heart problems. I knew my grandmother had heart problems, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that this would have happened to me.
Having survived the heart attack, Rose's journey to recovery began, and with the support of her devoted family and her medical team, she made the necessary lifestyle changes that would see her on her way to recovery.
And I started physiotherapy, and I went to the gym, and I started doing gym work, and I started the fight back. And by March, I was able to go and do a very first presentation. I think it was a workshop, an actor's workshop. And by the end of that year, I did a one-woman show, The Marilyn Story. Opening night was 3 hours on stage, me won. Doing The Marilyn Story. So I'm saying all of this to say that not because you have a heart attack, not because you have been faced with any kind of medical crisis, it means that you give up on yourself. You need to find out what is the road to recovery, and you need to work on that. So I changed my diet, I stopped eating meat. People say vegetarian diet boring. Well, me decide me go find all kind of exciting ways to make the food nice because me love food. And yeah, it has just been an awesome time of self-discovery, of recovery, of realization, of even aligning myself a lot more spiritually, because I do think that God saved me for something. He saved me for something, because I came that close.
Rose's story is a powerful one, showing that heart health awareness, family history, and a healthy lifestyle can make a difference. If you or someone you love is at risk, now is the time to act.
Persons should visit their doctor 2 to 3 times per year to have their blood pressure checked. Right? And if they have a family history of hypertension, you may want to go more frequently, or you may want to start getting measured earlier than that.
Did you know that finding out your blood type can reduce your risk of getting the wrong blood type during emergency operations or surgeries? Let you know if you're at a higher risk for certain diseases, like knowing that persons with type AB, A and B blood have higher risks for blood clots. And if you have a rare blood type, you could decide to store your blood for future use so you don't have to wait hours or days to find a match. So what are you waiting for? Find out your blood type today. It can not only help to save your life, but also the lives of others.
As we recognize Global Earth Day, let's take a trek to Richmond Primary School. I hear their 4-H club is using recyclable plastics to create a greenhouse, amongst other things. Sounds intriguing, right?
Recycling, the process by which used materials are converted into new, usable products. One of those commonly recycled materials is the plastic bottle. It's often used to produce a number of products, from clothing to furniture and even other bottles. But did you know that bottles can be repurposed into a greenhouse? Well, a team from the Richmond Park Primary School in Clarendon not only built a greenhouse, but also created an irrigation system along the way.
The JCCP and the UNDP involved us into a project in ways how we can sustain the environment. So our school, we came up with the idea of recycling plastic bottles, and because we are in the farming, our school is in the 4-H club, we decided to do the greenhouse and plant crops inside of it. We use plastic bottles a lot in our schools and our surroundings, and we see them all over the place. So we and the students, we came together with an idea to collect all the plastic bottles in our communities, and then we bring them back to our school, and then we wash them, and then we started to build the greenhouse. This size, it took us 1 week, exactly 1 week. Inside we have 6 types of drip irrigation system. We have the cone dripper, where we put the plant inside, we cut the liter bottle and put the plant inside of it, and the water is absorbed by the absorbent cord into the soil. That is, the plant can get the water and the nutrients also. And we have the hose dripper. When the water runs off the roof and catches into the bucket, it leads to the hose and it waters the plants also. And we have the plant hangers and the syrup bottle self-watering system, where the water drips from one bottle to the next until it waters all the plants. So you don't have to go every day to water plants. The bottles are there, it's a self-watering system. All you have to do is to pour some water inside the bottles.
The greenhouse was a hit at the 66th staging of the Denby Agricultural Show in Clarendon and caught the attention of several government ministers, one of whom was a minister without portfolio in the Agriculture Ministry, J.C. Hutchinson, who indicated that this project was in line with something he had been advocating for.
What I've been speaking mainly about is the hydroponics, which part of what you see there is the hydroponics, where you have the water coming through the plastic bottles to filter to the plants. And also you could have aquaponics also, where you have the fish below, and that filters through the plants, through the plastic bottles, and comes back out. Inside there is cooler than outside here, and I think if we can have some of these going, it might suit quite a number of persons who might think of setting up house.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. The use of plastic bottles in the agricultural sector is definitely becoming a thing. So give it a try. Start a backyard garden and help to rid the country of these pollutants. We all can play our part in helping to make the country a cleaner place and even help to boost the economy.
Here's an important reason you need to avoid or limit alcohol consumption. The World Health Organization (WHO) indicates that there is research evidence of a direct link between several cancers and alcohol consumption as a major contributing factor. It's being cited as a major contributing fact for cancer of the breast, colorectal, esophagus, liver, mouth, throat or pharynx, and voice box or larynx. There is no safe level of alcohol consumption, and the more you consume, the greater your risk. Protect your health. Limit your alcohol intake. Save your life. For help and more information, call the National Council on Drug Abuse (NCDA) at 876-564-HELP. That's 876-564-4357.
Let's now stop to take a moment to understand the cardiovascular complications of diabetes and how to treat this particular threat to good health.
Diabetes is a common illness. Most of us may be aware of its various complications, such as diabetic retinopathy and neuropathy, diabetic kidney disease, and so on. But when it comes to deaths caused from diabetes, cardiovascular complications account for the majority. Diabetes is recognized as one of 4 major factors for developing cardiovascular disease, the others being hypertension, obesity, and cigarette smoking.
About 68% of persons over the age of 65, and this is data now from the American Heart Association, 65% of persons over the age of 65 who have diabetes will die from heart disease, and about another 16% will die of stroke.
Before we take a look at how to manage or even prevent cardiovascular complications of diabetes, let us look at how persons come to develop the disease.
In a nutshell, what generally happens is that diabetic persons have a more rapid rate at which fat and cholesterol is deposited in the arterial system. So we all have that. It's considered part of the process of aging. Fat and cholesterol is being laid down in our arteries. However, diabetic persons tend to have that happen at a more rapid rate. Okay? And as a result of that, what tends to happen is that diabetic persons will progress to a point where they have compromised vessels. So in other words, the lumen, the diameter of the vessel, is narrowed, the flow of blood is limited.
And as the heart muscles become starved of blood, various acids accumulate and persons will tend to experience what is called angina, or a type of chest pain.
You may get complete blockage of the vessel, which may now result in what is called a heart attack.
Heart tissues are not meant to function in an environment where the blood sugar level is elevated. And so, another incidence of diabetic cardiovascular complication results where high blood sugar levels in persons who are diabetic becomes directly toxic to heart cells. This impairs the ability of blood vessels to open normally under conditions of stress, such as exercise, and also causes inflammation and impaired clotting of the blood.
So if they are chronically exposed to those levels of elevated blood sugars, then there are biochemical consequences. There's weakness of the heart muscle, and patients, many of them go on to developing heart failure and so on.
The diagnosis of cardiovascular complications is more difficult in diabetics, where the symptoms appear unclear or may be different from the non-diabetic patient. Take, for example, a non-diabetic person with, say, coronary heart disease.
Generally, they will say, well, look, doc, I felt pressing pain to the center of my chest. It's moving down my left arm. It comes on with activity. It stops when I stop engaging in whatever activity. It feels like a weight or like a pressure, like a squeezing sensation, and it's associated with other things like shortness of breath and so on. Diabetics, however, have a particular problem because they have damage to the nerves, and therefore they may not actually experience chest pain at all. If they do, it may not be the typical angina, which we would normally expect a patient to describe. Okay, so oftentimes diabetic patients who are having cardiovascular disease will say that, doc, I just feel a little funny sensation in my chest, a little discomfort, I just feel short of breath, or, I'm walking up the stairs, or I'm running after my grandkids and I find that I'm just out of breath.
The rest of the diagnostic process, however, is similar and may include an echocardiogram, ECG, blood works, or various stress tests accessible at public health facilities and at the Heart Foundation of Jamaica. Generally, diabetic patients will have elevated blood sugars in their urine, which, if identified, serves as a red flag and need for more specific testing. A urinalysis or urine dipstick test is generally done as part of school medicals, oftentimes as a screening test for diabetes. As with every illness, early detection and prevention is key to having good health.
It would be good every year for every person to be checked. If you're diabetic, you would have been told how often you need to check your blood sugar by your health professional. But if you're just doing checks and you're healthy otherwise, then at least once a year to check your cholesterol, your sugar, your blood pressure, do your ECG to see if there is any abnormality in the heart.
The treatment of cardiovascular disease in diabetic patients is more holistic, involving lifestyle changes to include diet, exercise, and maintaining a healthy weight.
In a nutshell, we advocate for, eating primarily fruits and vegetables, things like whole grains and nuts, limiting one's intake of fast foods with high fat content, high cholesterol, salt, and so on, and portion size management as well.
More unprocessed foods, less of the very refined high sugar foods. So there are those foods that are obviously very high in sugar. So the typical recommendation, if you look at a plate, half of the plate should be more plant-based foods, leafy vegetables, and some fruit.
In general, 150 minutes minimum per week of moderate exercise such as swimming, brisk walking, jogging, or cycling is recommended. Besides the lifestyle changes, clinical treatment through prescription drugs and surgical procedures is an important element in caring for persons with cardiovascular complications of diabetes.
We have medications to address symptoms. We have medications to prolong life. And that forms an important part of the approach. There are a variety of procedures which diabetic patients and other non-diabetic patients may qualify for, or it may be necessary to pursue. So we speak of things like stenting, for example, coronary artery bypass grafting, which is, of course, open heart surgery, major surgery. Diabetic patients we have a lower threshold for referring diabetics for that kind of procedure just because of the severity of their disease.
Medications developed primarily for use by diabetic patients have been shown to have significant cardiovascular benefits as they reduce the risk of death and complications related to cardiovascular disease in diabetic patients. But with most of them still under patent, access is quite costly. Your best treatment option is to adopt healthy lifestyle practices that make you less prone to developing diabetes or cardiovascular disease.
And that's it for today's edition of Jamaica Magazine. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., always remember that you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. Do join us again tomorrow for another informative show. Remember to visit our website in the meantime at gis.gov.jm for more news you can use. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay safe.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.